Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, well, happy full moon. And this evening, I thought to continue the topic of Anussati that we've been sort of picking away at and exploring. And again, this comes back to a reference where it seems very, very applicable to practitioners, not just lay people, but specifically very useful for lay people, people still in the world, people who still have duties. And it came about the who would be the future king of the Sakyan people, the Buddha's own homeland, a man named Mahanama. He was a very nice guy, very lovable, somewhat timid, easily startled, who heard that after the Buddha, had gathered up all of the princes and ordained them, and gathered up half of the royal family, and stayed a while in the Kapilavatthu, the capital city of the Sakyan people. The Buddha declared that he was going to be moving on. He was going to be moving back south to continue spreading the Dhamma and teaching people and growing the Sangha. And Mahanama heard this, and he was worried. He was upset. What am I going to do without the Buddha right down the road, able to give me stirring Dhamma talks whenever I begin to lose my confidence? So he went to the Buddha and he asked, like, there are people, like me who are just people in the world who have many duties and responsibilities. When you're gone, how should we practice? And the Buddha's advice to him is an enduring set of instructions that we know as the Anussati, the recollections. So we have sati, which is mindfulness. And as we talked about when we talked about the Dhamma, sati is very much a moment to moment capability of the mind. Yeah. It deals with a part of the mind that we're able to activate where we can have two different pieces of information available to us at the same time. So we're able to recall something in the moment that we want to keep in mind. And this is something we have to do intentionally. This is not something we do accidentally. It is something we choose to do. We choose to remember a specific piece of information. And because we do that, in the moment, we have choice. Whereas without mindfulness, we have no choice. We are operating on our conditioning. We are doing what we've programmed the mind to do. It will react to the world. But when mindfulness is present, we have two different paths based on the two different pieces of information we're presented with, what's happening in front of us and what we're recalling in that moment. But it's very simple and straightforward, and it doesn't develop in any particular way. Like we're choosing what we remember. Anusati, though it derives from the same root of sati, is a bit more fleshed out, is a bit more developed. It's not a momentary thing, but anusati, in terms of recollection, is the process where we repeatedly, continuously bring something to mind. And the effort there is not to present ourselves with choice as much as it is to develop new conditioning and to pursue greater understanding of that subject. It's much more contemplative when we do the recollections. Yeah. We want, we are trying to bring some topic into our decision-making process, but at the same time, the topics often tend to be so large that we can't hold the entire topic in our minds at the same time. Yeah, so we're only ever going to hold part of it. We're only going to be able to really hold on to an impression of that topic. But it can still have tremendous benefits. If it is a useful topic for recollection, then its multiple facets will all improve our decision-making process. Yeah. And as I said, when we're recollecting the Dhamma, we're recollecting there is order in the world, there is truth, there are tangible, experienceable realities, and that everything has a reality. Yeah, it has its own truth. And when we continuously recollect that, we begin to develop this real confidence that truth is something outside of us, our life, our moment to moment thoughts, that truth existed before the Buddha, it existed after the Buddha. It's always there. It's just a matter of do we apply ourselves to it? Yeah. And another great recollection that the Buddha offers is to recollect the Sangha. And serendipitously, we've got quite a Sangha here tonight. Yeah. And so, how do we do this? And how do we do it in the way that the Buddha is suggesting to develop a recollection of the Sangha? Yeah. Because when we first do the recollection, we have nothing more than the word, right? The Buddha said, "Oh, so you should take refuge in the Sangha. You should recollect the Sangha." And we're like, "Okay, what does that mean?" Well, it means the community of the practitioners. It's like, "Okay, yeah, yeah, I'll recollect there is the community of practitioners." Yeah. Now, very quickly, we're probably, if we're wise, we're going to start asking questions. It's like, well, what is that anyway? What does it mean? What's its function? What's it for? I mean, I get there is a community of practitioners, but why am I recollecting them moment to moment, day to day? Why am I continually applying myself to this topic? Yeah. And the Buddha, when he talks to Mahanama, he explains this recollection, and some of it is the stock phrase that we chant over and over and over again, the epithets of the Sangha. Yeah. And I'll read this from the Mahanama Sutta. This is in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Elevens. This is where the Buddha talks to Mahanama, and he says, "Furthermore, there is a case where you practice the recollection of the Sangha. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples have practiced well. They have practiced straightforwardly. They have practiced methodically. They have practiced dutifully. In other words, the four types of people taken as pairs, the eight kinds of individuals. They are the Sangha, the Blessed One's disciples. Such people are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They are an incomparable field of merit for the world." The Buddha goes on to say, "At any time when a disciple of the noble ones is recollecting the Sangha, their mind is not overcome with passion, not overcome with aversion, not overcome with delusion. Their mind heads straight based on the Sangha. And when the mind is headed straight, the disciple of the noble ones gains a sense of the goal. They gain a sense of the Dhamma. They gain joy connected with the Dhamma. In one who is joyful, rapture arises. In one who is rapturous, the body grows calm. One whose body is calmed experiences ease. In one at ease, the mind becomes concentrated." This is straightforward. Well, we got these epithets that we've been chanting, and if you've stayed at a temple, if you've been in any more orthodox Buddhist group, then you will know those chants. You will have done those chants many times, and it's kind of obvious, like a religious devotional duty, that you would have a chant where you praise the Sangha, but it's not just for praising the Sangha. As the Buddha presents it, it is part of this recollection, and the bringing to mind these qualities of the Sangha actually has a purpose. It has benefits. Yeah, as the Buddha says, while you're recollecting this community of enlightened disciples, your mind is freed in that moment from greed, hatred, and delusion, and it can gain a sense of the goal, gain a sense of the existence of the Dhamma. Yeah, it can head straight, it says. the path becomes clear because you're recollecting the people who practice that very path. Uh, Before I go into depth about those, I think it's very interesting. In the same chapter in the Anguttara Nikaya, we have an almost identical interaction where probably after Mahanama, but not long after Mahanama, you have another Sakyan goes to the Buddha. And this Sakyan is named Nandya. And nothing is really said about him in the sutta that points to anything being different about Nandya, but there is something we can probably infer because the Nandya goes to the Buddha and says, "Hey, I hear you're leaving. What am I supposed to do when you're gone?" And the Buddha says, "Well, there are these six recollections." Yeah, and he gives the other five recollections of the Buddha, the Dhamma, of Sila, of generosity, and of the Devas. He gives those pretty much the exact same. But instead of talking about the Sangha, the eightfold Sangha of enlightened beings who have all of these wonderful qualities, the Buddha he says this. Furthermore, Nandya, you should recollect your good friends. I'm fortunate, so very fortunate, to have good friends who advise and instruct me out of kindness and sympathy. In this way, you should establish mindfulness internally based on having good friends. That's interesting. You would think, Buddha Dhamma Sangha, this is like you don't you don't riff on this. There's no need. It's like it's compact. This is what it takes to be a Buddhist, right? A card-carrying Buddhist. But what is the function of the Sangha? And the Buddha uses a word you might be familiar with. He says Kalyanamitta. And this means beautiful friend, a good friend. And the Buddha uses this term specifically for our friends who are interested in our spiritual welfare. Yeah, this is not our buddies. This is not people we go to hang out with or we go to see a movie with. These are people that are our friends in the context of they want what's best for us. They encourage us even when it doesn't benefit them. Yeah. And they encourage us in the way that the Buddha encouraged people, which was, he wanted them to learn the Dhamma, attain the stream, and then go and practice. He had no attachment to them whatsoever. He wanted to get them headed in the right direction and then move on to the next person. Yeah. He actually didn't want them hanging around like parasites. Yeah, he wanted them to get the goal of the practice, to achieve the results. And these are our good friends. And the Buddha, when he talks about Kalyanamitta, he said, when he talks about himself as a Buddha, he, in one sutta, describes himself as your good friend. Mhm. Because part of the recollection of the Sangha is understanding that we are dependent on our good friends. What is the condition for us to even hear the Dhamma, to even know that the Dhamma exists? This is something we can't do for ourselves. Only perfectly enlightened Buddhas can do this in a vacuum. Only they have the capability and the accumulated merit and momentum to discover the Dhamma, discover the Eightfold Path when it does not exist. For all the rest of us, the Buddha says there is a condition for the awakening to the Dhamma, and that is the voice of another. Specifically, we need to be told that the Dhamma exists. We need to be told there are these Four Noble Truths. There is this Eightfold Path. There is greed, hatred, and delusion, and it is the root of suffering. We cannot know this on our own. Yeah. We can intuit little bits and pieces of it, but not enough to get a sense of the goal. Yeah. And when we do finally hear it from another person, it's often quite a revelation for us. Yeah, it is shining a light on the way that things work and why we feel the way we do. And by the way, suffering exists. A lot of people are trying to avoid it. They're trying to downplay it. They're trying to, say that it's not a thing, but it is a thing. It is out there in the world. So if you're feeling it, you're normal. Yeah. It is to be expected that you'll experience suffering, but it also has a cause and it also has an end. And this is something that we don't have without somebody pointing it out to us. Yeah. If we just go about our lives and just go through the world, we will not encounter anything with an end. That is just not the way samsara is built. Yeah. It is built to perpetuate cycles. Yeah. And to recycle us through these endless patterns. Yeah. Whereas the Dhamma points to an experienceable, tangible, concrete goal that you can achieve, not quickly, usually, and not without some application of mind, not without some effort, but you can achieve it. And once you achieve it, you are done. You have done something that's otherwise impossible in samsara. You have finished samsara. You have reached the end goal. Yeah. All of this being dependent on first and foremost a good friend. First and foremost, you have somebody to point it out to you. And and what I say you can probably intuit about Nundia is maybe he didn't have the best relationship with a lot of the Sangha, which is understandable because the Sangha at that particular point in time was made up of a lot of Sakyans. Yeah. Especially the monastic sangha was it was like all of the princes, yeah. So if Nandiya wasn't on good terms with a lot of them, then he probably wouldn't be super enthused about bowing down and paying respects to the monastic sangha. Yeah, because many of them they had just ordained. They were not enlightened yet. They did not seem super respectable and worth paying homage to. They had just shaved their heads and put on some bed sheets. Yeah, that's it. They're still the same old guys that I grew up with. I don't respect them. So the Buddha didn't say, Nandya, you have to respect the Sangha. Yeah. He said, respect the principle. Yeah. Respect. There are people in your life, in your community who look out for your spiritual welfare. And probably Nandiya worked it out on his own that the Buddha was one such person, even as he moved on, the Sangha moved on, that he could always recollect, well, the Buddha took the time to point these things out to me. I'm not sure about those other guys, but the Buddha was really kind. He was really compassionate, and he pointed me in the right direction. Hmm. So this quality of the friendship, the and having somebody to instruct and advise you. I think when we do the recollection of the Sangha, this is something that will probably resonate with us the most. Yeah, because Sangha as an overarching principle, what I'll get into with the eight kinds of individuals, may or may not make sense to us, may or may not be something that we get to experience on a day-to-day basis. But the idea that there are people who want what's best for us, who look out for us, and who'll do something that nobody else in the right mind would do, and that's point out our faults with the intent of helping us improve. Yeah, there are plenty of people in the world who will point out your faults, real or real or imagined. Yeah. But how many people in the world will take the time to point out your delusion, your greed, your hatred, your ignorance? Not to make you feel bad about it, but because they want you to overcome it. They're pointing it out so that you can know that this is causing suffering in your life. But there is a cessation to the suffering. Yeah. And this is what the Kalyanamitta are. Yeah. And we can see them in our lives. And often we get the idea, oh, yeah, Tahn Pamutto said I should recollect the Sangha. So what am I going to recollect? Well, we're probably going to think of our teachers. We're probably going to think of people we've practiced with. We're probably going to think of people we go to meditation groups with. We might think of, people we get on Zoom calls with. Yeah. We're going to think of teachers, we haven't even met them, but we read their books and it was super inspiring. Yeah. Our impression of them could be almost completely something we created in our heads. And yet the words that they spoke or the words that they wrote down made it to us. and it had an incredible impact on our lives. Yeah. So that's what we recollect. Like they didn't have to do that. And this is something that we know about all the teachers, is even the Buddha himself. He didn't have to teach. In fact, he wasn't even inclined to teach in the beginning. He's like, "Oh, what a hassle that would be." People will be such a burden, so annoying. I'll try to teach them and they'll misunderstand. And he probably knew, because you look through human history, how many times is a perfectly well-intentioned person started a religion, and then everybody goes and uses it as a reason to start wars, right? To commit genocide. Yeah, and the Buddha's, saying like, yeah, oh, I give them religion, they'll probably go and start genocides. Maybe I'll just stay under this tree and be happy and content. But then a Brahma god, got wind of what the Buddha was thinking and came down and said, on behalf of those who have little dust in their eyes, please go and teach. And the Buddha, looked out in the world and he saw, yeah, okay, there's a lot of deluded people out there, but there are some people who will understand. And out of compassion for them, he set out to spread the Dhamma, and we are the benefactors. Yeah, but in not many ways do we get the words of the Buddha, and not many ways is that what inspires, advises, instructs us on the path. Most of the time, it's going to be some living representative, somebody who has already done some measure of the practice that the Buddha laid out, and that's going to be who gets us started and inspires and encourages us on the path. Because I think you'd have to be extremely lucky and have a ton of merit to somehow stumble across the pure teachings of the Buddha and have that as your original inspiration. I mean, I don't even know theoretically how that could happen, because libraries don't have copies of the Pali Canon. And how likely are you to stumble across it while you're just surfing the internet looking for cat videos, right? No, when you encountered the Dhamma, it was because somebody took the time to point you in that direction. You were suffering and you were looking for a way out of suffering. And who was it? Because for each of us, we would probably think back, just like, wow, what was the first thing that got us started? Yeah, it was somebody who didn't have to make that connection. They didn't have to reach out. They didn't have to stick their neck out, but they did. They said, "Oh, are you suffering?" And you're like, "Oh, I guess that's what this is. Did you know you don't have to? Did you know that's optional?" And then you get started with that one thread, as we talked about with the Dhamma. It leads onwards and onwards and onwards. Yeah. When we do the recollection of the Sangha in this way, and we often bring up these people, our Kalyana Mitta and our teachers, our benefactors in life, there's an interesting aspect of the epithets of the Sangha that they're in the past tense. Those who have practiced well, those who have practiced directly, those who have practiced insightfully, those who have practiced dutifully. Yeah, it's a particular kind of past tense. I'm not too big on grammar, past participle or something or other. But what we are reflecting about when we think of these individuals is not the hypothetical. We're not thinking, oh, they try so hard, or oh, they're on their way to enlightenment. Yeah. We think of what they have accomplished in their lives. We think of the practice that they have done already. Yeah. Because that's really tangible. When we talked about qualities of the Dhamma, we're pointing our minds towards realities. And we don't know what people are trying right now. We don't know how long it will take them to accomplish enlightenment. We don't even know for sure that they're 100% headed in the right direction. Yeah. But we can know and verify those qualities that they demonstrate, which are fruits of Dhamma practice. Yeah. So if we've encountered someone who speaks with faith of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, if we encounter somebody who reveals to us a truth, what we can reflect on is the fact that they were able to do that, is all of the practice they have done to reach that point. The Sangha is, well, two ways of describing the Sangha. One is what we call the Four-Fold Sangha, and that is bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen, and laywomen. Yeah, so that was in the Buddhist time, that was a sort of net that was meant to encompass all the human beings who are alive. Yeah. You have ordained males, ordained females, men and women out in the world. And this is what the Four-Fold Sangha. It is anybody who is a card-carrying Buddhist. And what is the criteria? Well, they take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Even if they haven't attained some form of enlightenment, they are drawing close to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha out of faith or out of wisdom, seeing that there's something to it. Yeah. And when we get together online or when you go to a temple, this is what you are immersing yourself in. Again, most of the time, and if you have been to a temple, you probably had this experience where you're looking around and maybe you go to a meditation group. Maybe you study the Pali Canon and the suttas. Maybe you're very diligent, but you go to one of these events and you look around and they're there to offer food to the monks and to put some money in the bin and to have a good time and to meet people that they only see once a week and then go home. They don't have a meditation practice. They don't read the Pali Canon. They sometimes sit still through a Dhamma talk. They sometimes nod off. They but they like being at the temple. They like being part of the community, and that makes them part of this Four-Fold Sangha. They are helping to keep this practice available. Yeah, even if they themselves don't develop anything, even if they don't learn meditation or study in any concrete way, they are still keeping it alive. They are supporting it. Yeah. And this is the aspect of the Sangha where Sangha is the ultimate support for our practice. Even people who aren't enlightened individuals can be this field of merit that will make our practice possible. Yeah. You know, we can see the things that they are keeping alive, like the chanting. Maybe they do the chanting and they've never really thought about what it is they're chanting. But we hear that chanting and we do think about what does this mean? What is this pointing to? And based on that, we get inspiration in the meaning. Yeah. So they were a condition for our enlightenment. And just because they liked going to the temple. You know, they liked the potluck and the flags and all of that. But the other definition of the Sangha that we use shows up in those epithets, and that is the four pairs of people, the eight kinds of individuals. And this is what we call the Ariya-Sangha, the enlightened Sangha, the Sangha of noble beings. And this is a very different kind of definition of Sangha, where you can reflect on the eight levels of enlightenment. And we call them four pairs because there is a path where you have discovered a way of development, a way of practice that can lead you to particular fruit. And that is the attainment of a concrete, stable, unrevocable stage of enlightenment, of waking up to truth. Yeah, and as the Buddha lays it out, you have the first level of enlightenment, which is you have just enough faith or just enough wisdom to get a sense of the goal, that the goal is possible. If you get just that much, you are guaranteed to eventually get to the eighth step. You are guaranteed to eventually get to full enlightenment because your mind is now heading straight. It's gotten a sense there is this goal, and I think I want to reach it at some point. Yeah. But then beyond that, there are four sort of checkpoints. So stream entry, once returning, non-returning, and full enlightenment, where it's not merely an idea, it's not merely, oh, I think I could get this result from practice. But having done that practice, you achieve the result. And having achieved the result, you've got it for the rest of your life and for the rest of whatever you have left in samsara, which from the moment of stream entry is a rapidly diminishing amount of time. Yeah. And stream entry being, as we talk about it often, is this point of eradicating doubt. From that point on, you can really say, I go for refuge. I have confirmed faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. No matter what crazy stuff you get up to in your life from that point, you're never going to feel complete unless you're oriented towards the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Yeah, you might dabble with yoga, or you might, put up a nice wall painting of some Hindu deity or a little Ganesha statue you might get, and you'd be like, hey, it's fun. It makes me feel good when I see it. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you take refuge in those things. It doesn't mean you think those things are going to get you out of trouble. You have confirmed for yourself that the only way you get out of trouble is through your own application of mind. Yeah, is through dealing with your own greed, hatred, and delusion. Nobody can do it for you. Once returning is a stage quite a bit beyond this. Whereas in order to be a stream mentor, you need to have confirmed confidence in sila, in morality, specifically in the five precepts. You know, you can't kill, steal, cheat, lie, drink without consequences. And maybe you still dabble in those consequences, but you are absolutely certain there are consequences of these things. You do not see them as ever being profitable, wholesome activities to partake in. But when you get to the stage of once returning, you have, in effect, mastered Sila. Because at that stage, you have eradicated lust and hatred, and you have completely removed from the mind any capability of harming another being because of your greed or hatred. Yeah, and as the Buddha says, you have attenuated greed and hatred to a large degree. Because really, the worst part of greed and hatred is when we act on them through speech or through bodily actions. Yeah. And at the stage of once returning, you have cut that off. You have said, okay, look, I've still got some naughty thoughts in my head, but they are going to stay in my head. They are not going to come out into the world no matter what, because I know that they will hurt other people if they do. And that's a level of extreme responsibility and confidence and discipline that can't be faked. Yeah, well, the once returner has reached that level and they will never go back from that. The non-returner is the beginning of the end, and that in order to be a non-returner, you have to go so much further, and you have to actually master meditation. You have to master samadhi to the point where you get to a state of having eradicated greed and hatred from your mind in a particular time. Yeah. And you wake up to the reality of like, oh, this is what it's like when greed and hatred have ceased. And non-returning is when you decide that you like that and you would like to stay on this side of greed and hatred. You don't want them to come back. Yeah. So you have achieved the liberation of mind and you stay there. You've removed all the conditions whereby greed and hatred might arise in the future. Yeah. So they are cut off as hindrances, as fetters. They're removed from the mind. And at that point, the Buddha says there's no condition by which you might be reborn in this world. Because it turns out to get a body, you need to have greed and hatred. Yeah. Which is an entire contemplation that you can do. It's just like, well, why is it? What is it about greed and hatred that causes me to have a body? Well, that's a huge metaphysical question that I don't have ready answers for, but that's the way it is. Yeah. If you don't have greed and hatred, then the mind is kind of permanently at a certain level of peace and happiness and contentment and joy and non-aversion. Yeah. It will take everything it's presented with, and regardless of how it feels about it, it will just accept that that's the way it is, and it won't suffer over it. Now, the difference between a non-returner and the arahant is some beings reach this stage of non-returning and they decide there's still this residue in the mind. There's still these bad habits I developed when I was under the influence of ignorance. Bad habits of like having a personality, of being restless, of still wanting something in the world. And these keep getting me into experiences that prolong my experience here in samsara. They keep things going. Yeah. And what if I were to remove all of that residue? And so the Arahant is the final stage, right? They completely remove all residue of ignorance, yeah, while they are still alive. While they still have a mind, they remove all of the parts of the mind that would cause them to generate suffering for themselves or for others. Yeah. So this is the eightfold Ariya-Sangha. And how much experience do you have with this? I don't know. You might have some suspicions about some people that you've met. Yeah, and if you've gone deep into the greater the monastic tradition and you visited esteemed teachers, you might suspect that you've met people who are far along on the path and who might have, yeah, you might have even met arahants. There are some countries, Buddhist countries, where the majority of people believe that it's no longer possible, where this was a thing that they did back in the Buddha's time, but now we're in the declining age of the Dhamma. And beings now are just getting ready and they're making merit so that when the next Buddha comes along, they can get enlightenment then. But if you've been to Thailand or you've been to Burma or maybe Sri Lanka, you might have encountered people who are like, oh yeah, no, he's an arahant. That teacher, they're an arahant. They're totally enlightened, yeah. Or maybe even Tibet. I saw a wonderful documentary of an enlightened bhikkhuni who's super ancient and bedridden during the documentary. She does nothing but spin this prayer wheel all day, like all day. Because she's been enlightened for so long. This is the only reason she's still alive is out of compassion for people. She doesn't have anything left to do, but she's just like, well, if I'm still breathing, I'll make merit and try to help anybody who comes along and try to teach them what I did to get, to the full enlightenment. But maybe you don't have these experiences. Maybe you haven't met these people. So then how do you relate to this idea of the Arya Sangha? And I would say it depends on your level of faith and your when you try to recollect this, you're going to be recollecting what I just laid out, the qualities of these levels of enlightenment. You're going to think about that, and you're going to think like, do I know anybody who might have some of these qualities? Do I know anybody who seems to be free of doubt? Do I know anybody who has like really strong sila and they never do anything that they know would harm another being? Yeah. Do I know anybody who is one of these jhanawalas, these samadhi people who seem to sit down in meditation and like actually enjoy it? Do you know people like that? Yeah. Then maybe you don't know for sure. Maybe you haven't confirmed for yourself that they are enlightened, but you can see these very qualities in them. You're like, that's what we're going for. That's, the direction we're headed. We're all headed. Yeah. And through reflecting on these qualities, you get a sense of the way of the sort of mentorship and the way that people who are traveling along this path are traveling along the same path. Yeah, it's like we're all going to the same destination and we're all taking the same route there. But as you look forward and you look back, you realize there are people ahead of you who have a better sense of where you are headed because they've been there already. And when you look for mentors and teachers, you're like, oh, what I am doing right now, when I describe it to them, they're like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, this happens. And then this happens. And then this happens. You're like, they've done this already. They've been here. They figured this out. Yeah. And so there's somebody you can rely on. Yeah. They might not have a perfect, clear picture of how to instruct and advise another person to practice the Dhamma, but they do have experiential knowledge of what's ahead of you. But when you look back, you will see the same thing of others. You'll see somebody who's just getting started on the path or who's making their first steps into meditation or studies of the Pali Canon, and you might think to yourself, "Oh, I remember being there. Isn't that great?" So you can go to them and you can say, Is there anything I can do to help? And however you might feel about your own practice on a day-to-day basis, and many of us, I know, because we all talk, it's like many of us are way too hard on ourselves. We think I had an impure thought at 4 p.m. I'm not as developed as I thought I was. Yeah. But as much as like we know our own faults, the fact that we are aware of our own faults is in itself an aspect of the Dhamma. Is in fact, mindfulness is developing to the point where we feel it. We feel really bad about it. Yeah. But if we were to just reflect in this way that, oh, there are people behind me who are still coming, that I actually have something I could offer to them. If anything, and this is, I think, one of the greatest things about being a monastic is you don't actually have to do anything to inspire anybody. Just the fact that I get dressed, just the fact that I sit here, even though my knees are hurting, just the fact that I took the time to come down and be here with the Buddha statue can be inspiring to people. Yeah. There are ways that just being a Buddhist practitioner can inspire others. And this is something maybe you don't get much sense of as a layperson, that if others knew that you were a Buddhist practitioner, they might be encouraged and inspired and might even dabble in these different things that you know for yourself work, like mindfulness and meditation and sila, generosity. Yeah. But the only reason they don't dabble in it because they think they're all alone, because they have no idea they're surrounded by people who are like doing it every day, who have confidence in it, confirmed faith in this practice. Yeah. So if I had my way, I mean, you would all be all dressed in white and you'd have little prayer beads. Maybe you'd have like a Dhamma wheel on your shirt, like some people walk around with these logos on their t-shirts. And everybody would know as they saw you. It's like, oh, that person's a Buddhist. Yeah. And even people who are not Buddhists would start to do inadvertently this recollection of the Sangha. They would know that the world is not filled with crazy, murderous people who are just trying to take my stuff. They would look out and they'd see, like, wow, a lot of the people out there on the streets are good people, people who have taken the time to take precepts, who take the time to go to temples, who take the time to try to improve themselves. If you only knew the degree, the degree to which the people around you are trying in all these various ways, yeah. Some successfully, some unsuccessfully, but are actually trying. Yeah, as I've said, it seems to me the world is pretty much 50-50. 50% of people are trying to do good, and 50% of the people are trying to do bad. And if we just look at the world in that way, it does encourage us in our practice. Yeah. The vast majority of people will benefit us, will want to benefit us, try to do good by us, whether or not they're Buddhists. But if they are Buddhists, then there is some context for the way that they want us to succeed. They are a potential Kalyanamitta. Were we to get in the right circumstances, the right interaction with them, they would be able to be a supportive condition. And so as I've talked at length for the last 45 minutes, you can think of this in a way as a vicarious practicing the recollection of the Sangha. This is what I do when I sit down and I recollect the Sangha. I sit and I go through all of these different things that are in the epithets of the Sangha. I think about what the Buddha has said about the Sangha. I think about my teachers. I think about other practitioners. And I recollect all these various facets. You've gotten that by proxy, because I've just spewed out all the things that I think about when I recollect the Sangha. And you got it without having to sit and do it. But if you do want to follow the Buddha's advice, then this is exactly what you'll do the next time you're sitting down and you have the thought, oh, I should really recollect the Sangha. Just go through the lists. Just think about it in these various ways. Just call something up and trust. Trust in whatever comes to mind. Yeah, develop your own understanding, your own like emotional associations with this material, and you will find that it will encourage and inspire and support you in your practice. No matter what's going on in your life, it will be something you can always turn to. As I said, the Buddha is said to be the antidote to suffering. You know, recollecting the Buddha is the reminder that suffering is impermanent, that it can cease. The Dhamma is said to be the antidote to fear. Recollecting the Dhamma, recollecting truth, will bring up confidence, will remind the whatever you're worried about, you're afraid of, you're anxious about, there is the Dhamma, which is beyond it, outside of it, unperturbed by it. And when you recollect the Sangha, it's said to be the antidote to disease, illness, yeah, affliction. And how is that? Well, as I've said, what isn't the worst part about being sick when you think you're alone in that? Doesn't it seem so much more manageable when you realize you're not the only one? Yeah. That you have not that you're just not the only one who's sick, but that you have people all around you who will try to help you if they knew and try to support you in any which way. And this is the Sangha, yeah? Because we are sick. Yeah, we have greed, hatred, and delusion. But there are people around us who see it and want to help. Yeah, and so this can always be the ready antidote that we can have when we feel overwhelmed. All right, so on this full moon night, I offer these thoughts for your consideration. May they be a benefit for you in your own practice.